Welcome everyone. Welcome to the lesson 6 of political science. So we have discussed administrative and legislative reforms that were taken before 1857. 1857 we considered it because it was considered as the first war of independence. Okay. So now we are moving ahead to the administrative and legislative reforms that were taken after 1857. Why? Why it is so important? Because the 1857, when the revolt happened, so it shaken the British Empire, and they started to they started to take a reference, a consideration that we have to take India seriously, and we have to place multiple administrative reforms within the country so that they can run their profitable business and rule over the all other empires and all. Okay, so that's why from 1857 to 1947 we consider British rule for the India, which was almost 90 years, which was almost 90 years. Okay, so moving ahead to the lectures. Yeah, so first act which was passed, it was Government of India Act 1858. Okay, and similarly we will see there were multiple acts that were passed, like Indian Council Act and Model Minto Reforms, Indian Council Act, then Government of India Act of 1915. There were multiple acts were passed. Okay, so I will just name those all the reforms, all the administrative reforms that were taken before, and we'll discuss each one by one, all the important stuffs within those acts. Okay, so Government of India Act 1858 happened, then Indian Council Act of 1861 happened, then Indian Council Act of 1892 happened. 1892 happened. Then Model Minto reforms and the Indian Council Act of 1909 happened. Then it was again Government of India Act 1915. Then Government of India Act 1919. Don't worry, we will remember all those years. We will have a key for that. Okay, and then we will have Government of India Act, which was 1935. Okay, yeah. So these were the reforms that were taken after 1858 till 1947. Now we will discuss each about them one by one. Okay, so 1858, if you the key part to remember it, how we are going to remember it. So if you see, first was Government of India Act. First was Government of India Act, and after that continuous we will be having 3 Indian Council Act. Okay, okay, and after that 3 consecutive Indian Council Act, will again have Government of India Acts. Okay, now key to remember for it. Now 1858 we know, 1857 was the first war of independence. That was mutiny happened within the armies, within the military people of the Indian origin. So we'll remember that it was 1858, the next year, when the administrative reform taken place. Okay, now after that, within the 2 years, like when this implementation happened, then within the law also, by on the book also, we have to change the laws. Okay, so after after 1960, after 3 years, we'll have a Indian Council Act reform. Okay, now nothing but we have to add 31 years into that. Okay, just just think about 31 years after the Indian Council Act, again another Indian Council Act was passed. Okay. Ha. So we'll get 1892. Now till here, this is like that we have to remember. Now we'll remember 1909, like 909 digits are same. After that we will able to see that 1909. Okay. And then we'll have 1915, which happened before first World War. Okay. So Indian Council Act, which continued like after plus 3 years, then 31 years, then we'll remember for the 1909. Okay. Now we'll start our Government of India Act, which will be 1915, which first before the First World War 1915, then after World War 1919. Okay. And then before independence we'll have 1935. Okay. Yes, it is little bit tricky, but once you go through it, you will be able to understand, and it will be easy for you to remember. 1858, first war of independence. 1857 happened. Then after that, administrative reform came to place. Then 1858. Then we'll have, after 3 years of it, we'll have 1861, and then after just 3 years, like see, you have to just compare like 3 years and then 31. Both we have to keep these three same place and just give one. Then 31 years you have to add, or just take this one. Okay. So 31 years. So it will be your 1892. And 1892, and after that try to remember 1909, because 9 nines are there, so like that you try to remember it. And then we'll enter into Government of India Act again, and one will be your just before First World War, around First World War, before that 1915, then after that First World War 1919, and then it will be 1935 before independence. Okay. So I guess this one was little bit tricky, but you will be able to remember it if you go through it 2-3 times with this logic, and you can make yourself another logic for it to remember. Okay. So moving ahead, we'll start with the Government of India. We'll start with the Government of India Act 1858. So it will be, as the name signify, it will be very important for it. So what happened when this First World War of Independence happened? Then British Crown from the Britain, they started, they understood like now we have to take control over it, otherwise they will be thrown out from the country. So British Crown decided to assume the sovereignty over the over India through the East India Company, and in apparent consequence of revolt of 1857, described as an sepoy mutiny of British historians and remembered as the first war of independence by the Indians, that I've already stated. Now the first, like the British, now through this act, British Crown decided to assume, because whatever the things were happening, it was because of East India Company only. So that's why they decided to assume sovereignty over India from East India Company. Okay. Now second important point about this, the first statute for the governance of India under the direct rule of British government was the Government of India Act 1858. So what does this mean? It was the first statute. What do you mean by a statute? A statute means, if you search on the Google also, it is written law by the Legislative Assembly. So it was the first law, it became the first written law by the Legislative Assembly for India under the direct rule of the British government through this, which happened through this Government of India Act 1858, a statute, first written law. Okay. Now just it is a key term to you remember. I'm not going to write whole sentence, otherwise it will consume a lot of time. Okay. Now the third important thing, It provided for absolute British imperial control over India without any popular participation in the administration of the country. This act does? This act provided the people who are sitting in Britain, they are controlling the country and they are not actually participating in the administrative work of the India. They are sitting there. They are just looking. They are just doing that, looking from far away. Okay, yeah, and this is, I'm not talking about the period where we have mobile phones, video callings and all. Okay, so it provided absolute British imperial control without any proper participation, without any proper participation in the administration of the country. Okay, now another important point: the power of the crown were to be exercised by the Secretary of State for India, and it will be assisted by a council of 15 members known as Council of India. So see, now power of crown will be exercised by what post? Secretary of State. Secretary of State for India. Like, it will be exercising the power in the country, but whose power is this? It is the power of crown, which is being exercised by the Secretary of State. Now Secretary of State will use the power, and now who will work under the Secretary of State? Now the Secretary of State will have a council. Now Secretary of State will have council, which is called as a Council of India, and when it was formed, it was total 15 members. It was total 15 members. Okay, now so British Crown will have the power of the British Crown will be exercised by the Secretary of State, and which will Secretary of State will have a council of 15 members, which is called as a Council of India. Okay, now after that, what happened? Another important point: the country was divided into provinces headed by a governor or lieutenant. Okay, so now the whole country, let us suppose it is your country. I'm not going to draw this, otherwise it looks bad. Okay, let us suppose this is a country. So within the country, multiple provinces were formed. Okay, multiple provinces were formed. It was divided into provinces, which were going to be headed by the governors or lieutenant governor. Okay, and it will be aided by, they will also have, like, just think about today's scenario, how we have a chief minister reports governor, and chief minister also have a council of ministers. Similarly, at center also prime minister is there. Prime minister reports to president, and prime minister have a council of ministers. Just the same thing, because we have replicated this thing only at our current existing parliamentary system. Okay, so the governor will be there, lieutenant governor will be there. Okay, and which will be aided by and they are going to be aided by the council of ministers. Okay, council of ministers, that they call it as a executive council. Second pen is not working. It looks pen is hanged. Yeah, now it is working. Yeah, okay, so it will be aided by the executive council. Okay. Now another important point for it, the provincial government had to function under the superintendence, direction and control of the governor general in all matters. So this is provinces, this is provinces, this is provinces, this is province, this is province. Okay. Now whoever the ruling under the provinces will have to work under the governor, under the aid and advice of the governor, and that still exists today. Governor is being appointed by the central government today also. Okay, so forget about that thing, so we'll focus it here. So all the authority of the governance of India was vested, all the authority of governance of India was vested under the governor general in council. So there will be governor general in council for it, similarly the prime minister of the current scenario. Okay, so these governor will be will take the control from the, will take the order from the governor general in council. Okay, and this governor general is responsible for a state of this state of secretary of state. Okay, the secretary of state was ultimate responsible for the crown, British parliament. Okay, so I guess this thing is clear. Government of India Act of 1858. Okay, now we'll proceed to the 1859 in another lecture, otherwise this lecture will become big and I will also feel bored and you will also feel bored. Take a break, come back again, go to the next lecture and watch another government, another reforms, that is Indian Council Act, and will similar fashion will move ahead to the other administrative reforms. Thank you.